experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled.
From the studio gym where excuses never apply.
It's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We have a great show today. Actually, it completely revolves around diet, interestingly enough. We're going to be talking about how, during the first hour, how when and not what you eat may influence breast cancer. And then later in the show, we have a listener of the show that's coming on to share his story about going through a few different dietary templates to find optimal health and energy. He went vegan, he went keto, he went carnivore, and he's going to share all of his stories and what he learned on that journey and where he ended up. So that's today's show. Before we get started, of course, we have to thank our title sponsor, and that is Legendary Foods. Legendary Foods just came out with a brand new tasty pastry. These are the new cake style tasty pastries. They're not like the original ones. The original ones were more like a Pop-Tart. It was more of a rigid pastry. These are more like soft, flaky, almost like you would experience if you were eating an apple turnover. And their latest flavor is red velvet, 5 grams of net carbs, 0 sugar, 20 grams of high leucine, high quality protein. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10, you'll save 10% off your order. If you don't want to buy them and you want to try to win them, we're giving away a lot of free tasty pastries. We're giving away a box a day on every show. It's really easy to enter to win. Just listen to the commercial breaks, and during the commercial break, you will hear a secret word placed in between 2 commercial spots. Type that secret word down into an email, send it to onair@superhumanradio.net, and you are entered to win. Like we said, we're giving away a box a day, and there's a lot of happy people out there getting them. If you've won already, sit back, sit on your hands, and let somebody else win. And also, we can only ship these to the United States, inside the United States, not because we don't want to incur the postage to ship them elsewhere, but because this is a food product that has certain restrictions that have to be met in order to be shipped to different countries. So unfortunately, at this point in time, until Legendary has distribution in these other countries, we have to restrict this giveaway to the United States only. So there you go. And now, without further delay, let's go ahead and get my guest on. And he is Dr. Nicholas Webster. How you doing, Dr. Webster? Welcome to the show, and thank you for making time to be here today.
Good.
So
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and so we're gonna talk about a study that you just published, your group published, looking at the role of meal timing as opposed to what specific foods one eats, and the potential for its implications on breast cancer. Why this study? What work had preceded this, that this study was the next logical step?
So before I start discussing that, I just want to have a disclaimer. I'm a professor at University of California, San Diego, and I'm also a senior research career scientist at the VA hospital in San Diego. So cool. These, what I'm about to say, these are my own personal views and should not be taken as reflecting any kind of official position by either the university or the VA.
Understood.
But so basically, my group has been interested in how altered metabolism, in particular obesity, has impacts on various disease processes. So we know that obesity will affect metabolism. We know that it causes insulin resistance. It predisposes towards diabetes. But there's been an obesity cancer link that's been known for many, many years that we haven't really understood, why there's a link and then how to perhaps, manipulate that. So, most of the connection between obesity and cancer has come from sort of very large sort of observational studies, where they've just shown that there's an association of obesity with various cancers. And it's actually quite a few cancers: breast cancer, liver cancer, kidney cancer, colorectal, endometrial, pancreatic. There's a lot of cancers that seem to be sensitive to your metabolic status, right? And in most cases, there's an increased risk. It can be anything up to about a twofold increased risk, depending on, the particular cancer and the particular population. And we know that if people lose weight and they lose their obesity, the risk goes down. So it is definitely the being overweight that is driving this increased risk. And obesity, we know that it's a problem these days. Probably 70 to 80% of the US population is overweight, and between 40 and 50% would be classed as obese, which are, huge numbers of people. And so, we need to address what obesity is doing to our national health, because this is something we're going to have to deal with. There's a lot of people that, even though the increased risk might not be that much, with the sheer number of people that are obese, this gets to be a lot of people that have obesity-driven cancers. Some of the estimates are that there might be anything like 25,000 cancers per year are specifically, because of the obesity. So this is a large number of people that are affected by this. So, we've been interested in what's the link, how does obesity affect, initiation of tumors, how fast they grow, that kind of thing.
Can we talk about that just for a second? Just
sure.
Stay with me for a second. So we know that fat cells. So are the obesity cancer rates, are they gender skewed by any chance? Do women tend to have higher rates of certain types of cancers than men when both groups are obese?
Well, if you look at a cancer that both men and women get, say, liver cancer or something else, then there's no real difference in the obesity effect. Yeah. Obviously, when you're talking about prostate cancer or breast cancer, that is very heavily skewed one way or the other. But it does seem to affect both men and women. One of the reasons is that after menopause, women metabolically look much more like men. So before menopause, when women still have estrogen, that tends to be protective. So they tend not to have so much of a metabolic problem with the obesity. But as soon as they hit menopause, they become just like men, and the rates of cancer and obesity are exactly the same.
Is there any indication that there might be a role of aromatase enzyme, which resides in fat cells? I mean, we hear people talking about how fat is an endocrine system, right? Well, so is muscle, but that fat is an endocrine system and it's producing hormones. And sometimes these hormones may predispose someone to cancer, or even if it doesn't predispose, it tends to kind of fan the flames. In the case of, endometrial, ovarian, breast cancers, we know that estrogen plays a role in possibly fanning the flame. Is it possible that obese women produce a lot of estrogen in their fat cells, and that could be the link to higher rates of female-related cancers?
That's one theory, yes. So particularly for breast cancer, this has been sort of proposed that you can demonstrate aromatase expression in adipose tissue. And so it's thought that there could be local conversion of steroids into estrogen that would drive a local tumor. So, typically it doesn't change circulating levels that much. It's not like, circulating estrogens are way higher in an obese woman, but, you could have local production that could affect the cells in that vicinity, and they could see, a fairly high concentration, but kind of once it gets out into circulation, it gets diluted, and so it doesn't seem so much of an increase. So that's one possibility, and that would obviously be relevant for the hormone-dependent cancers, hormone-dependent breast cancer, prostate cancer, but others, like liver and colorectal and kidney, they're not hormone sensitive particularly, so it's unlikely that will be affecting those. And yet they still have an obesity-driven component.
So the other component of obesity and carrying lots of adipose tissue is it upregulates inflammatory markers, right? Inflammatory cytokines, and so the more fat cells you have, the more inflammation you have, and there is some indication that perhaps inflammation is maybe the first domino that causes these oncogenes to turn on and shift to a cancer environment. Could it just be that? Could it be that the fat cells are just making all this inflammation, and we know inflammation is bad for everything?
That's another possibility, and there is some evidence for that. Not necessarily in breast cancer and others, but for example, in lung cancer. So there was an interesting finding from a cardiovascular trial where they're using an anti-IL-1 beta blocker because they thought it would have cardiovascular effects. And the one thing they noticed is that the people on this IL-1 beta blocker did not get lung cancer. And so all of a sudden, there's this very strong link now between IL-1 beta, which is an inflammatory cytokine, driving lung cancer. So you're right. I think that these inflammatory cytokines, they modify, the local microenvironment. They cause, an influx of inflammatory cells. They cause oxidative damage, and they may, contribute to that sort of initiation, those first oncogenic effects. That where the cell picks up mutations that allow it to start growing, and they may actually contribute to sort of the later growth, by providing the blood supply, because tumors need a blood supply if they're going to grow, and some of these cytokines can have angiogenic properties. So yeah, that is a possibility, and we've kind of looked at that in some of our studies. A few years ago, we were looking at obesity-driven breast cancer, and we were looking at whether you could use a fish oil supplementation to block that. And in fact, it did. It worked really well, and that the obesity effect to drive the cancers was completely eliminated when we gave them high levels of fish oil. Now, these are really high levels. This would be very difficult to achieve, for humans in a diet, but it did show proof of principle that these things will work, and they are known to improve inflammation, suppress inflammation. The interesting thing we found is when we did this in the mice with the tumors, that the ability of these fatty acids to suppress the inflammation was completely overridden when you had a tumor there. It seemed like the tumor was driving a much stronger inflammatory effect than the fatty acids, the omega-3s, could overcome. So we didn't see an improvement there. And in fact, when we used it was as a therapy, etanercept, or Enbrel, which is used in a lot of people, it's a TNF blocker. We used that to block the inflammation, and actually did nothing to the tumor growth.
Interesting.
So in our hands, in our models, it actually seems to be more linked to the insulin levels, the hyperinsulinemia that's in the diabetes, rather than the inflammation. So that was actually kind of one of the reasons we designed this recent trial, because we thought that, we know that if you can improve metabolism, reduce the hyperinsulinemia, make animals less insulin resistant, that the tumors will not grow as quickly. So the one way that you can do that is with this timed eating, and there's a number of groups, and particularly Sachin Pandas and a couple of others, who've done a lot of work on this. When you eat, not what you eat, is important. So you can eat a very caloric, high-fat diet, high-cholesterol diet, but as long as you limit when you eat it, and you have a good period of fasting without eating, that's actually beneficial and can sort of overcome the effect of the diet. So we wanted to test that in a cancer model, because this has been shown metabolically. This works metabolically, but no one has looked at this to see whether it would have an effect long-term on cancer. So that's why we designed our study, to see if we could get this metabolic improvement through this time-restricted eating, would that actually then translate to impaired tumor growth? And indeed, that's what we found.
Fascinating. Yeah. So talk about it. Talk about, how was the study designed? You had there's a standard model of diet-induced obesity in mice.
and we feed them a very high fat diet. So 60% of the calories come from fat,
Right.
and most of it is kind of lard-based fat. So it's animal fat, and the mice love it. They eat it like crazy. They eat it 24 hours of the day. They just kind of graze on it all the day. They don't sleep and then eat. They just basically kind of keep munching at it all day long, and they get really fat. So we can get mice up to 50 grams, whereas a normal mouse would be 25 to 30 grams.
Right.
So they're basically doubling their weight in fat. And if you introduce tumor cells into these, and this study was with breast cancer, but we've done this with other cancers too, the tumors grow much faster, they're much more aggressive, and you get more metastasis in the obese animal, right? So that's sort of the model system. So then we put them, we made them fat first. So we made the animals obese first, and then we put them on these different diets, the one where they just continually eat, and then the diet where they had the same food, but they only had access for 8 hours a day. And it was at nighttime because that's when mice are usually active. They're nocturnal, so they eat during the night. So we gave them an 8 hour period. They could eat as much as they want. And actually they eat the same amount as the ones that have access for 24 hours. They just cram it all into that 8 hour period.
Same calories. Interesting.
Same calories.
Yeah.
They eat the same amount. The interesting thing is the mice that have continued access, they continue to get fatter and fatter and fatter, right? The mice that have the timed access, they're already obese to begin with, and they maintain that obesity. They don't lose weight, but they don't put any more weight on, right? So it's kind of stable. They stabilize their obesity, and they're eating the same amount of food as the ones who are continually getting fatter. So wait, it's not the
nuance here. So that means that even the person that is already, or the rodent that's already obese, seems to get protection from shifting their feeding interval to one that more mimics a time-restricted feeding interval, even though they're not, because they're not. I thought you were going to say they lost weight, and I'm like, oh yeah, sure, and the inflammation goes down, but no, they it was protective, just shifting their time of eating.
Right, that's right. So in fact, it's almost like it's changed the set point of their body mass. Whereas if you have continued access, that just continues to go up because they're eating all the time without breaking. But if you just restrict when they eat, it basically resets where they are, and they maintain that body weight. And they were obese to begin with, so they will maintain that. Other people like Sachin Panda and others have done studies where you take lean animals and you put them on the diet, and they never put on weight. Right? They don't get obese, and they're protected from the obesity. But if you do it the other way and you make them obese first and put them on this type of restricted diet, they will maintain their obese weight. They don't lose weight.
Fascinating.
But metabolically, if you look at their livers, a liver in an obese animal, they have basically fatty liver disease.
Right.
They have early, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, NASH. That completely goes away if you do this timed feeding. The livers look like they come from a thin mouse, a lean mouse. And if you look at inflammation, that goes away too. So we've created a state where they're obese, but they're metabolically healthy.
Interesting.
And if you look at the human, literature, the clinical data of these, this has been a sort of a contentious area, whether there is such a thing as a metabolically healthy obese person. Because there are people out there, it's up to maybe 10% of the obese people who, if you actually brought them in and you did a glucose clamp study, or if you assessed them metabolically, they would look perfectly fine. They would look normal. They wouldn't have insulin resistance or any of those things. Whereas the other 90% do. And people have argued about this for a long time, whether these people really exist or whether this is just that they don't have quite so many of the bad effects of the obesity. But it might be that this is not really related to the diet and what they're eating, their obesity, but rather to when they're eating, because we can create this metabolically healthy obese state simply by restricting when they eat.
I would argue that if a person is obese and they're only eating at a specific window, and we're going to discuss the window you found, yes, they definitely, as you point out, can be overweight or obese and be healthy. But I would argue that that's not the case in America when we look at the general population. I just gave this analogy recently. So most people who are obese are eating late into the evening. Sometimes they're not observing good sleep hygiene, and that's how they become obese. And if you take a snapshot of them, let's say in their 30s, you go, oh, wow, you know, your cholesterol's okay and your blood sugar isn't, and, you know, looking at blood sugar and not looking at the amount of insulin the pancreas is having to produce to keep it there is really a false picture. You know, if I'm going up a hill with my car, I may have my gas pedal to the floor, but I'm only doing 40 miles an hour and I'm burning a lot of gas. So someday we'll start checking insulin and blood sugar, and that will give us a true snapshot. But the thing that I would argue about most Americans today is, and I use this analogy, and it's very crude, so I'm going to warn everybody now. But if I jumped off a 100-story building and I went past the 50-story and I went, see, I'm still alive. Well, yeah, I'm still alive, but I'm going to be dead shortly because I'm going to hit the ground. And so I would what I want to be careful about is there's a dangerous message to tell people you can be obese and be healthy. Because, yeah, you may be healthy right now, but if you stay on that track, you're not going to be healthy. And so I want to just be careful because we have to be cautious when this discussion is actually becoming very politicized now, and it's a lightning rod. But yes, you can be healthy today, but if you're eating late into the evening, you're staying up at 10, 11, 12 o'clock watching Jimmy Kimmel, and you're eating food and you're getting 5 hours sleep, you're getting up in the morning and you're downing all the coffee you can to get started, and then you're eating all day long. You may be healthy for a little while when we take that snapshot, but like the guy who jumped off the building, when you hit the ground, you're going to die, and that's going to happen. So I just want to put that out there. I just want to put
that's very true. And when we talk about this, we talk about metabolically healthy, but that doesn't mean obesity is not doing all sorts of other things.
Right.
So it's doing terrible things to your joints, with the extra weight that you're carrying around for 60 years. So obesity has all sorts of other effects, but metabolically, there has been this issue is maybe, in terms of how your body handles glucose and nutrition, you could actually look, pretty okay, even though you are obese. But I agree that obesity has many, many other bad things, and people should not think all of a sudden that, oh, I'm fine.
I'm fine. I can stay this way. I just have to change the way I eat, or the time that I eat. That should not be the message. So let's talk more. So how did you look at the effect on the tumors, the breast tumors? Talk about that.
Well, so we did a number of different models. So the effect of obesity on breast cancer is mainly in postmenopausal women. So we used two different models of postmenopausal obesity in mice. One was basically an ovaryectomy. We took out their ovaries. And the other was a chemically induced model. So there's a model, you can give them a chemical toxin that basically kills the follicles, the primary and the primordial follicles in the ovary. And so over a period of about 10 weeks, the mice will actually go through what looks like a menopause, where their ovaries stop producing steroids. So we used two different models, and then we used a hormone-dependent breast cancer, so an estrogen and progesterone receptor positive tumor. And we also used a triple negative one, which is not generally hormone sensitive.
Yeah, that was good. That's very good that you used both of those models.
And both of them were inhibited by putting them on the time restricted feeding. And if we look at tumors and we look and look at the cells and on sections of the tumors, there's much less proliferation and there's much less vasculature. So angiogenesis, for recruitment of blood vessels to the tumor, which is important for tumor growth, that appeared to be inhibited as well. We did it, so those were in models where we actually put in tumor cells. So these were established cancer cells, and we can inject them into the mammary fat pad and they'll grow like a breast cancer. We also did it in a spontaneous genetic model, where these mice get spontaneous tumors and had exactly the same effect there. It was specific for the obesity though, because we also did it in lean mice, and it had no effect in lean mice. So this is only working on the obesity component, the obesity acceleration.
Yeah.
This is not like we were killing the tumor cells off themselves. The tumor cells are still there, but they would just grow at the slow rate that they would grow in a lean animal.
Yeah, suspended animation. Tumors can go into a state of suspended animation where they don't grow, they don't shrink, they just remain the same.
And this was a breast cancer study because that was sort of the most obvious one to do. We've now done this in other cancers. We haven't published the data yet. We're still finishing up the studies, but it's also working in other cancers too. So we don't think this is just something for breast cancer. We think any of the cancers that are obesity linked, we think this is probably going to work in.
We have to take our first commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about metastasis. I want to talk about ketone bodies. I want to know, did you look at ketone bodies in these rodents? Because we know that the ketogenic diet has been shown to stop metastasis. It's very effective in controlling cancer's growth. So we'll talk about that when we come back. This is a fascinating discussion. And this is the thing that I find most fascinating is the rodents didn't get leaner. They didn't lose weight, but they still had this protective effect. That's should create a lot of hope for women out there. That, hey, you can get on your fat loss journey later, but start doing this now as you start to segue. And then it's just a matter of reducing calories to meet your metabolic rate and expenditure on a day-to-day basis and being slightly under the calories you need. And then the weight will start coming off. We're going to take a break. Stay tuned. You are listening to and watching Superhuman Radio. We'll be right back. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/try20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/whiteoak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order. Segway. The power of light can be truly life-changing and an important element for every superhuman. Because of this, I want you to experience the power of award-winning Celluma light therapy. Celluma utilizes NASA research technology to improve health at the cellular level and is cleared by the FDA to effectively treat a variety of pain, muscle, and joint conditions, as well as facial wrinkles and acne. Our entire team here at Superhuman Radio uses it. Its innovative shape-taking design allows for easy placement anywhere on the body. Choose from 13 different models. For an exclusive listener discount, go to shrnetwork.biz/Celluma, that's CELLUMA, and use code SHR10 to save 10% off of one of these award-winning devices. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON, the number 1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon 1 banner ad today. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon.
This is the Superhuman Channel. Evolution just got kicked up a notch.
Were you listening during the commercial break? Did you hear the secret word? All you have to do is email it to onair@superhumanradio.net, and you are entered to win a free box of the new cake-style tasty pastries. Don't miss out. We're talking today with Dr. Nicholas Webster. We're talking about this. This is fascinating. You know, I do a lot of shows about science, and most of it leaves many of us feeling like, oh, wow, you know, this will be nice someday when I can take advantage of it. But what you're exposing here is something that every woman can start doing tomorrow. And we're going to discuss how to structure time-restricted feeding intervals in a second. But I love shows like this because it gives you real-world approaches and tactics to actually do things without having to buy anything. So I have to applaud you. This is fantastic work. And I can't wait to see what you come out with next. So we know from Dr. Dominic D'Agostino and from Dr. Thomas Seyfried that the ketogenic diet, which turns on ketone bodies, halts metastasis and in a variety of cancers, including brain tumors, which the oncology segment really doesn't have a lot of success with brain tumors without, you know, opening up your brain and exculpating the tumor. With that being said, do you think the fact that the time-restricted feeding stimulates over time a person's ability to create ketone bodies, do you think that had any role in the success of the outcome?
Well, I'm not sure that it's actually the ketone bodies that are doing it. You know, we looked at ketone bodies, and you know, when the mice are not eating for that 16-hour period, you start to see sort of an increase in beta-hydroxybutyrate. Particularly as you get towards the end of it, after about 12 hours, in that 12 to 16-hour period, that's when it really starts to go up. As soon as they eat, boom, the ketone bodies go back down to normal and their glucose comes up. So, you know, we always look at the glucose to ketone ratio. So, you know, we thought that might be the case, and we actually looked to see whether the cancer cells could use ketone bodies as an energy source. You know, because the reason we make them under these stress conditions is that the brain and other tissues can use ketone bodies instead of glucose. And so it provides an extra energy source. So interestingly, the tumor cells cannot survive on ketone bodies. They have to have the glucose.
Right.
And so it could be that, you know, because you're reducing the glucose and you're providing more ketone bodies, that it's less nutrients for the tumor cells. So maybe they don't grow as fast. That's a possibility. But, you know, the ketogenic diets, they have had some success in, you know, these tumor models. The Volta Longo at SC has done a lot of the studies, and he had a nice paper recently using his fasting mimicking diet, which is basically a ketogenic diet,
right?
And shown that actually it synergizes with chemotherapy. That the chemotherapy is much more efficient when people are on this diet. So it does work. You know, those diets, though, they're like any diet, whether it's Atkins, ketogenic, or whatever diet you care to name, people will do it during a study when they're on it, but it's really hard for people to keep it up afterwards, right? So yes, these things work. You can use caloric restriction. You can use these different diets to have beneficial effects, but the problem is the long-term adherence is not great. People tend to stop doing it after a while. So that's why we think that this timed eating might be better, because you're not forcing yourself to eat something you wouldn't want to eat anyway. You're eating your regular diet. You're just limiting when you're doing it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And there was a study from Sachin Panda and Pam Taub where they were doing this in sort of pre-diabetics. They wanted to look at the effect of the time-restricted eating in pre-diabetics. And they did the study, which was, 9 months or 12 months or whatever it was. And then they had a follow-up, a year later. And they went back and they asked how many of the participants had continued to do it on their own, even when they weren't in the study, when the study was done. And a large number of the participants had continued with their timed eating, even though they were no longer required to do it, because they found it was enjoyable. They liked it. They felt better. They had better sleep patterns. They felt healthier. They had more energy. And so they continued to do it, even though they didn't have to. But they were still eating, whatever they normally eat. It was just restricting when. And so we think this might be easier to maintain long term, which when you're looking at cancer risk, you're not looking at something that's going to happen 2 months down the road. You're looking at something that might happen 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Right. So this is a lifestyle change. This is not a short-term diet. Right? If you're looking for weight loss, something like that, this timed eating is not for you. Right? This is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about weight loss. We're talking about a lifestyle change that's going to be beneficial over a long period and to reduce, your risk of a number of cancers.
So time-restricted feeding has been shown to turn on some metabolic machinery that is anti-aging, if you will, right? We know sirtuins go up. We also know that autophagy has a stronger effect on ridding the body of certain metabolic debris. And there's even evidence that the new, not necessarily really new, but new in many of the anti-aging communities, discussions about senescent cells, that time-restricted feeding has the ability, by ramping up the metabolic garbage disposal system, to actually eradicate these senescent cells, which have been tied to pro-inflammatory conditions, as well as, the way I understood it is that the reverse transcriptase type viruses like COVID and SARS actually use senescent cells as their factories. And that's why people who are on anti-rejection medications like sirolimus and rapamycin, even when there was a fascinating discussion about the guy and his wife that were on the boat that no one could get off of during the beginning of the COVID breakout. And he barely had symptoms, and they had to keep his wife on the boat. And we found out that he was a kidney transplant recipient, and he was taking sirolimus at fairly high doses daily, and it protected him against even getting the virus. So, and that's a long way around this question. When you look at these rodents in the study, did you look at any of these markers? Did you look at senescent cell accumulation and eradication in tissue? Did that play a role? Because we know senescent cells are damaged cells, and there is some theory that they could become tumor cells easier than their quiescent or healthy compadres. Any indication that senescent cells are playing a role in the effect you saw?
Well, we didn't look at senescent markers themselves. We looked at apoptotic markers, which is, another sort of programmed cell death. And that was very much affected by the time-restricted feeding. The apoptosis went way down. There's an interesting link, you were talking about rapamycin. That's it inhibits the mTOR pathway. Right. And that's a nutrient-sensitive pathway. So, one of the questions is, how does, insulin and nutrients synchronize cells? And it could be that when you fast, all the signaling goes down, the insulin goes down, the nutrient signaling goes down, and then when you eat, you then signal, and you get an insulin increase, and you also get stimulation of this nutrition pathway through mTOR. So the fasting inhibits this mTOR pathway, which will be exactly the same thing that rapamycin is doing.
Right. Right.
So what you're essentially doing is, by fasting, you're damping down this signaling, and this signaling has an impact on autophagy. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So it's interesting that if you think about senescent cells, there's a protein that's involved in that senescence that we've also studied on a different project. And this protein is actually very sensitive to obesity and fatty acids and insulin. And it will cause this protein to get degraded. And so there is a link between, your nutritional status and insulin, and some of these proteins are involved in cellular senescence.
Can you say?
So yes, I think there could be a strong impact there too. What's
the name of that protein, please?
It's an RNA splicing factor that we work on.
Okay.
So that's probably a little sort of left field for most people because they don't think about what.
Not my audience. No, this
okay.
audience you'll find on any podcast, I promise you. Except maybe aside from Dr. Peter Attia's podcast. I don't want to insult anybody. Yeah, because this is fascinating. The other thing I want to make sure is so people hear, turning mTOR off is good, but mTOR is one of those things that should be high when appropriate and low when appropriate. And so the idea of just completely suppressing mTOR and trying to live forever is a mistake. In fact, I haven't read the study, but a study was just sent to me linking metformin use with the with breast cancer. I haven't read the study yet, and I'm not a fan of turning mTOR off and crushing it. mTOR is responsible for memory formation. When you form a memory, these are proteins, and they're being stored and made and folded. And if you don't have mTOR, then you can't make memories and you can't retrieve them. In fact, there was a study done on how to get people who suffered from trauma, like someone in the war, in a war that suffered from trauma, how to get them to forget those memories. And they used a very powerful mTOR blocker that was infused. And it was so effective so what they did was they gave them the mTOR. Have you heard about this study? They gave them the mTOR blocker. Then they asked them to recall the events that were troubling them. And literally a half hour later, they couldn't recall it because when you pull that memory out and read it, then you need mTOR to fold it back up and put it away again. And so it doesn't get put away, so you lose the memory. The only reason why they can't use it is because if you go home and you see your wife, a half hour later, you won't remember she's your wife. I mean, it's that powerful. So the idea of just suppressing mTOR completely is not a good idea at all.
Well, you're right that we need these things at some times, and we need to switch them off at other times. And any drug that simply suppresses something 100% of the time is not going to be good in the long run. You need insulin signaling, you need mTOR signaling at the appropriate time, and it needs to be switched off at other times. Yeah. So yes, I mean that's very important.
So I want to take our last commercial break for this interview. When we come back, I want to kind of talk about the templates of time-restricted feeding that humans use and how some of the audience can take advantage of it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Getting a massage post-workout is a proven strategy to facilitate better recovery. Getting to massage therapists can be difficult and expensive, especially in these times. The solution is the Meteor, a heated massage ball from Milestorm. Reduce pain and soreness and expedite recovery with the Meteor's research-backed vibration settings and therapeutic heat. It's convenient for travel and works on any body part. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Meteor and use code SHR15 for 15% off and free shipping if you buy 2 or more. Start recovering better today. Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Are you ready to change the way you age? Of course you are. That's why you're here. Juvicel is a new first-of-its-kind dietary supplement that includes 10 key research-backed ingredients shown in studies to support lifespan. Things like resveratrol, fisetin, quercetin, pterostilbene, sulforaphane, turmeric, all in a single dose. You may have some of these ingredients already, but Juvicel is the first to combine them all into a single product to support your lifespan. It's vegan, non-GMO, and sustainable. Live better longer with Juvicel. Go to shrnetwork.biz/live better. Use code SHR and save 20% off today. January is World Carnivore Month, and more people are finding the carnivore diet alleviates the symptoms of autoimmune disorders as well as digestive and gut problems. But there's one issue. The carnivore diet is called the low residue diet because you're not eating plants and you're not getting fiber, and the protein takes longer and longer to digest. Some people notice that they are very constipated in the early phases of their carnivore diet adventure. Well, I have the solution. It's a product by Bioptimizers called P3OM. P3OM is a probiotic that is specifically designed to digest protein. In fact, P3OM doubles its population in your gut every 20 minutes, making it easier and faster to digest the protein you're consuming on your carnivore diet. If you find the carnivore diet is hard for you to stick to, don't give up. Just add P3OM into the mix and you'll love it. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3OM and use the code SUPERHUMAN. That's SUPERHUMAN and save 10% off today. Folks, I'm pleased to announce that Pure Nootropics is now carrying the antioxidant alpha-lipoic acid in its bioidentical natural form as R-Ala. R-Ala provides protection in many areas and has even been shown to promote weight loss. Check out the interview I did on episode 2608 back in October to learn more. Our friends at Pure Nootropics have been bringing you great products and deals since 2013, and they have another one with R-Ala. Go to shrnetwork.biz/pure and use code SHR30 for a whopping 30% off. Level up. Go Pure. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Sure. They lost their internet.
Mike,
so they can be back on.
Hold on. This is a disaster. This never happens, but we lost all of our internet connection. So we're gonna pick it up like we just came out of the break, and we're gonna talk about the intervals that people will enjoy. So just let me get this music to run. No, I don't even need the music. So we're just gonna pick it up right from here. Let me start the tape. Okay, sit tight. We're going to come back from the break. Hi, everybody who's watching live. You just experienced an internet outage. We're back on. Here we go. Welcome back to Superhuman Radio. We are talking today with Dr. Nicholas Webster about how time-restricted feeding affects breast cancer. So if people want to take advantage of time-restricted feeding, how is it done appropriately, do you think, for, let's say, women out there who say, I'm going to give this a try, I want to start tomorrow? What do you think?
Well, ideally, you want to have a period of 14 to 16 hours overnight when you don't eat anything, no calories. So, when exactly you start and end, it's sort of flexible. Personally, I try and have my last meal by 6 p.m. and then I try not to eat until 10 in the morning. That gives me 16 hours. That's kind of what I shoot for. I mean, I don't often do it quite that long. Another important thing is you want to have your last meal probably 4 hours before you go to bed.
Right.
Because you want your last meal to be digested. You don't want to be sleeping while you've still got a full stomach. That's actually, you get a lot of de novo lipogenesis in the liver, and that's quite detrimental. So it's better to have an earlier meal, let it digest, and then go to bed. But that's kind of what I shoot for, is sort of like a 6 to 10 period. And, I have a lot of colleagues and people that sort of ask me what to do because, they know our results, and so they're all trying it. And that's generally what people are trying to do. The hardest thing for me was giving up my early morning, cup of tea or coffee. That was what I liked. But now I just have black and no cream and no sugar, and that's okay.
So Dr. Dale Bredesen has been on the show a couple times. You're familiar with him. He's been working with Alzheimer's disease out there in California. And he calls for a 3 to 4 hour window between the last meal and bedtime because it actually helps the brain clean up a lot of the metabolic debris through autophagy as well. And it can help people with Alzheimer's disease. It's fascinating to me that I would call this a more ancestral feeding style. We didn't have refrigerators. We spent more time being who we were than we are who we are today. And our body, and everyone agrees that most of the diseases today are diseases of modernity. And so if you look at how our ancestors probably ate before 40,000 years ago, when we started to monocrop, raise crops and even animal husbandry, we didn't have a refrigerator to go to first thing in the morning to grab food. And maybe we had some berries and nuts left over from the day before, but our first meal in the morning was probably fairly minimal. And I do believe that that's what they did. They stored certain things that they could eat in the morning, and then they got on their way and they walked and they worked and foraged and hunted and gathered and all that sort of stuff to get the food. When you look at that, and then you think about day and night, our ancestors didn't want to be out at night when they could actually become food. So chances are, once the sun was going down, you got close to camp, you got in your cave or your hut or whatever it was that you were living in, and you didn't really move around too far past the fire that you had going because you could see. And when you look at that, that is how we evolved to eat. And now we have a refrigerator and we have delivery service and we have Papa John's delivering pizzas all the time of the night. And we've just got this all whacked out. So really, all you're really saying in this is we should go back to eating the way we evolved to eat instead of this modern way. Would you agree with that comment?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We were hunter-gatherers. There was meat occasionally, but a lot of it was roots and berries and plants. And you're right. I mean, it was whatever you could eat during the day. come nightfall, you didn't want to be out there because you were going to be prey for some other predator. So I think that is the way we developed, and that's why our body can handle that.
Right. This is fascinating. We will post a link to the paper on the website with today's show posting. I tend to do. I'm doing my time restricted feeding a different way now. I believe that first morning meal goes hand in hand with daylight to tell the body it's daytime, to kind of synchronize all of the different clocks in the systems, suprachiasmatic nuclei, and all of the different organ clocks. So I eat my first meal now, first thing in the morning. I do cardio, 40 minutes. I have my first meal earlier instead of staying fasted till, I used to stay fasted till after the show. Today I'm fasting. Today is part of a 3-day fast I just started. So I'm not eating anything for the next three days. But generally I would fast until after the show, and that would be my first meal, and I'd eat up to 6 o'clock and then I would stop. But I'm doing something different because I really believe that feeding is one of the cues that helps synchronize the clock. So now I'm having my first meal, but I'm done at 5 o'clock. I'm done eating at 5 o'clock. So I end up with my 14 to 16 hour fast, but I have my first meal earlier in the morning. Do you think there's anything inappropriate with that, or that may not work as good as the research you did?
No, I think that's fine. If you did your eating completely out of phase with what we're talking about. So if you're a night shift worker, and so you're eating at night and sleeping during the day, and so if you are 180 degrees out of phase, then that's not as good. I mean, that's been shown in animal studies. But if you're a couple of hours off at either end of the window, that's not going to make much difference. Yeah. I think that's all fine. I mean, the important thing is to do the 14 to 16 hour fast.
So I want to close this interview by saying that if you are a woman and you are suspicious that breast cancer runs in your family, you can do something tomorrow that has nothing to do with you having to lose weight. And that is start to eat. You eat 8 hours a day. That's basically what the template is. You can shift that any way you want as long as you're not eating for 16 hours a day. And it's easier to sleep 8 hours of that 16 hours. So if you time it right, you have your last meal by, let's say, 6 p.m. and you don't have your first meal till the next day. I think it's 10 is 16 hours, I want to say.
Yeah.
10 o'clock the next day. And you start eating that way and you'll protect yourself against breast cancer, it looks like. So this is a wonderful, wonderful study. I love it. Actionable steps. I love actionable steps. I want to thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Take care. Take care. We're going to take one quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by my friend, Mike Hazel. Mike is an interesting guy. He is fascinated with diet and its effect on his health and energy. And he's learned some things. He's been vegan, he's done keto, and he's done carnivore, and we're going to learn. This is like an N=1 type study. So stay tuned. You're watching and listening to Superhuman Radio. We'll be right back.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Segue. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/try20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order. Are you ready to change the way you age? Of course you are. That's why you're here. Juvicel is a new first-of-its-kind dietary supplement that includes 10 key research-backed ingredients shown in studies to support lifespan. Things like resveratrol, fisetin, quercetin, pterostilbene, sulforaphane, turmeric, all in a single dose. You may have some of these ingredients already, but Juvicel is the first to combine them all into a single product to support your lifespan. It's vegan, non-GMO, and sustainable. Live better longer with Juvicel. Go to shrnetwork.biz/live better. Use code SHR and save 20% off today. Folks, I'm pleased to announce that Pure Nootropics is now carrying the antioxidant alpha-lipoic acid in its bioidentical natural form as R-Ala. R-Ala provides protection in many areas and has even been shown to promote weight loss. Check out the interview I did on episode 2608 back in October to learn more. Our friends at Pure Nootropics have been bringing you great products and deals since 2013, and they have another one with R-Ala. Go to shrnetwork.biz/pure and use code SHR30 for a whopping 30% off. Level up. Go Pure. The power of light can be truly life-changing and an important element for every superhuman. Because of this, I want you to experience the power of award-winning Saluma light therapy. Saluma utilizes NASA research technology to improve health at the cellular level and is cleared by the FDA to effectively treat a variety of pain, muscle and joint conditions, as well as facial wrinkles and acne. Our entire team here at Superhuman Radio uses it. Its innovative shape-taking design allows for easy placement anywhere on the body. Choose from 13 different models. For an exclusive listener discount, go to shrnetwork.biz/Saluma. That's CELLUMA. And use code SHR10 to save 10% off of one of these award-winning devices. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use code SHR20 to save 20% off your entire first order.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
Hey, welcome back to Superhuman Radio. This is my friend Mike Hazel. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, Carl. How are you?
I can't hear you. Do you have your thing muted?
Don't think so.
No, it's kind of low. Let me see if I can turn you up. Hold on.
Okay.
See if that works. Any better?
How about now?
No, it sounds like you're muted. Let's see now. Hold on. Talk now.
Okay. How about now?
I can just barely hear your voice. It's almost you must have a volume control on your end.
I do. It's all the way up now.
Barely hear you.
Okay. How about if I unplug the microphone?
Having nothing but technical difficulties today, so this is par for the course. Don't worry about it.
Is this
Maybe just
better?
take the headphones off and speak into directly into the phone.
Does that do any good?
Can't hear you.
Any good now? Okay.
Hold on. I see what's wrong. My fault.
Okay.
How about now? My fault. I'm a schmuck. You know what? Okay. You know what? We lost internet and it totally threw me, and I'm still thrown, to be honest.
That's okay.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, sir. It's a privilege to be here.
Yes. Thank you very much for saying that. So Mike Hazel is a friend of mine, and we talk diet often. And when I was talking to him the other day, I was thinking, man, I got to have Mike on the show because we've had people promote different types of diets on the show. Most of them have pretty selfish reasons. They're promoting a product. They're promoting a supplement. But Mike is actually one of us. He's a superhuman. How old are you now, Mike?
64.
Okay, so Mike's 64 years old. So he's just like me. We want to live as long as we can. We want to be as strong as we can be, and we don't want to succumb to disease. So start with the beginning. When did you first become fascinated with diet, Mike?
Well, briefly, I guess it would probably start back in college. There was a book that I heard about titled Sugar Blues by William Dufty. You may be familiar with it. Yeah. And then another book, Diet for a Small Planet by Frances Moore Lappé. And she originated the idea of protein complementarity, which fascinated me at the time, whereas like beans and rice together, if they would offset the amino acids lacking in one by combining with the other. So that's kind of where it started. I didn't really go all in back then, but I found it interesting. And then probably in my 30s is when I kind of came back around to it with a vegetarian diet. And then, the old saying, in for a penny, in for a pound. So I thought, well, I'm learning all this about vegetarian diet. Let's go vegan and see how that works. So I was in my probably mid 30s at that time.
Okay, let's stay in that period for a second.
Okay.
So the vegetarian diet, were you a lacto-ovo or pescatarian? Did you allow yourself fish or eggs or yogurt and lots of plant-based?
Eggs, yes. I had kind of gotten away from dairy products at that time because it helped with my sinus trouble. So I wasn't, maybe a little bit of fish, but red meat I was staying away from due to what I'd read in another book I'd picked up around that time.
Which one? Just curious.
I believe it was titled May All Be Fed, and it was by John Robbins. And it had, among other things, his issue with red meat was nutritional and ethical both. So he got into all the issues with the ethics of making veal. Also cited studies about how red meat causes excess uric acid and kidney trouble, which in recent years I've found has been largely debunked. But at any rate, that's kind of how that all got started.
When people talk to me about being an ethical vegan,
mm-hmm.
They shape things to suit their argument, I find. And so we're the only animal on the planet that thinks it's a bad idea to eat other animals. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Well, I mean, of the omnivores, right? Lions don't go, man, I feel bad for those gazelles. I'm going to start eating tree bark. No, right. Nobody. We're the only ones. And you know why that is? I understand why it is. Because we put way too much thought into death. And what I mean by thought into death is we put way too much thought into the idea that death is scary and painful. And it's anything but that. It's if you're lucky enough and it's swift, you don't know anything even happened. If you're old and you die in a hospital and you're miserable, you're hoping for death. You ask anybody, go into anybody in a nursing home, say, oh, aren't you afraid to death? No, I just want to get this over with. I'm miserable. But
right.
We put way too much emphasis on sorrow, and death is an event like taking a dump. It's like everything else. Boom, it's gone. So right. That's why people feel sorry, because they think that animals think the way we do. Oh, that animal, it doesn't want to die. Sure, an amoeba doesn't want to die. Everything is driven not to die. But It's silly to use ethics as a reason to eat or not eat certain foods. My humble opinion. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes. No, I agree. People want to moralize about that, but they don't want to talk about the rabbits, the mice, all the other animals that die from big monocrop operations with
growing their kale, right?
Exactly. Corn and soybeans.
Yeah. So when you went vegan, Mike, when you went vegan,
yes,
did you feel better in the beginning? Did you go, wow, I feel amazing?
I did. I felt that it improved my health, and I would say in retrospect that was because of getting off of a lot of processed foods.
Right.
So what I did not do was stick with it a long time. Now, the people I follow and listen to today will tell you that that's what you can expect to have happen, but eventually it catches up with you. like your liver can store B12 for a very long time, but eventually you're going to run out. And so vegan diet will catch up with you after a year, 2 years, whatever. And I stayed on it for about a year. And really, I think I got away from it just because it was just too big of a pain in the neck to stick to it.
Right.
And so I just kind of went back to standard American diet after that. Tried to stay away from the junk food, of course, but
right.
That was it. Life kind of went in different directions, and I didn't. So I went back to eating red meat and seafood and chicken and all those kinds of things.
How'd you feel when you went back to it?
I didn't really notice that anything really went downhill because, like I said at the time, I found that staying off the dairy products helped with my sinus issues, which had been, at that time had been a lifelong struggle.
Okay,
so more than that later.
so now you back on the standard American diet. How's your body weight from vegetarian to vegan, and then back to FAD? How's your body weight?
Not an appreciable change. I've always been pretty thin, and 5'10", 140 pounds when I was younger, and kind of stayed around that area. So I didn't really put on any more weight at that time in my 30s and 40s, and it did start to creep up later.
So then your next, let's say, dietary excursion was the ketogenic diet. Why did you get on the ketogenic diet?
Well, that started about a little over a year and a half ago, and I probably will give most of the credit to a friend of mine.
I don't know if you can hear me, Mike, but you just dropped out. You dropped out. What's the friend of yours name?
His name's Mike also. He's owns an auto repair business, and he's my mechanic and good friend of mine. So he just mentioned one day that he had started getting off or had started somewhat of a ketogenic diet. He'd been told he was diabetic or nearly so. And he finally badgered me long enough that I thought maybe I'd better try this myself. So I started to do the research, and a lot of what I was seeing and reading I found very compelling.
We lost Mike. Today is my day. Today is my day to have. I hope he knows he's disconnected. I really wanted to do this interview. Just stick around. I'm sure he'll reconnect. A lot of times when somebody's using their cell phone to do the show and they get a phone call, this is what happens. He'll probably reconnect in a second. The fascinating thing about Mike is that he had lots of problems. He had sleep apnea. He had put on a lot of weight. That's why I really wanted to have him on the show, because when he told me his story, I was like, you know what? My audience needs to hear this. So hopefully he'll just be back here in a second. Hey, by the way, during the commercial break, we gave the secret word twice today. And if you email it to onair@superhumanradio.net, you're entered to win a box of tasty pastries. We're giving away a box a day, so it's real easy to win. I'm just going to vamp here for a couple minutes until Mike gets back. I guess I'll have to cut this out of the show as well. Let me go ahead and stop the tape for a second. Yeah, somebody doesn't want me to do this show today, it seems like. That's all I can say. Hopefully he'll be able to reconnect. I know he's doing the interview from his phone, and I always tell people to plug their phone in because iPhones are notorious for going dead right in the middle of an interview. Let's see if he's calling me or... Oh, boy. I stopped the tape. Those of you watching, unfortunately, I can't stop the video, so you're going to have to just live through this for a couple minutes. I'm texting Elisa because she sets up all the interviews, and I'm sure she has Mike's cell phone number, and he may not know that he disconnected. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Oh, boy. Or do I have his number already? I may have it, actually. Hold on a second. Hold on one slick second here. What is today? There we go. Let's see if I have his phone number in here. I'm sorry for doing this to y'all. It's not really what I wanted. Yeah, there's no phone number. His cell phone number is not in here. I hate to end this interview because his results has been amazing, and I really wanted to do this. Let me just call him. Hold on. One ringy dingy. Two ringy dingy. Days like this, I don't feel like doing a show when this kind of stuff happens.
Oh, Mike Hazel.
Mike, you dropped out. I don't know if you know, but you need to reconnect the way you connected in the beginning.
Yeah, I've been trying to for like 4 or 5 times now. It won't. It just says loading, and the StreamYard thing won't do anything.
Well, I guess what we're gonna have to do is just move this interview to another day and time. I'm sorry about that, Mike. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think it'd be better to do it from a computer anyway. So maybe we'll just.
I am doing it from a computer.
Oh, okay. Why don't you try doing it from your phone?
Okay. Yeah, because every time I try to reconnect here, it just says something went wrong. Try again.
Yeah, just try. Just go to the link that I sent you and try using your phone to log in. You should be able to get right in.
Okay, will do.
All right, bye.
I'll do it right now. Bye.
All right, so we'll give him a minute because I really want to. And then I'm going to have to edit the crap out of this audio. This won't be on the website by tomorrow morning. It's going to need a lot of editing. We'll give him a minute. Thanks for hanging around, the 3 of you who are watching right now. Everybody else went, the hell with this. I'm not waiting. And they tuned out. But this will all be edited out of the tape. So anyway, yes, disasters do happen, and they happen often when you do a live show. Look, we have a 4th person that just logged in. Thank you for coming. The show is frozen right now because we're having technical difficulty with our guest. This is like C-SPAN. You get to see behind the scenes. And as soon as he does log back in, we'll finish the interview. Let's see if he is able to log back in. Otherwise, we end the interview here. I really wanted to do the interview about the breast cancer and time-restricted feeding because that's a big one for women. That really will help somebody. Come on, Mike. Somebody here. Let's see. Somebody's watching. Liam McAvoy. Now we know it's really live. Yes, it is. No one wants to do live. Nobody does live because of this. I'm the only schmuck that does live, and I think I'm going to have to pull the plug on today's show. We'll have Mike Hazel back on, and I promise we'll get through the entire interview because his story is phenomenal, and I think it'll help a lot of people choose. Oh, here he comes! Here he comes! Here he comes! Here he comes! There he is. Okay,
hey, Carl, I'm sorry.
Not a problem. Hold on. Let me just start the tape here. So let's just pick it up where we left off. So
okay.
Then you started the ketogenic diet because your friend Mike urged you to try it.
Yes.
And what did you notice when you started doing the ketogenic diet?
Well, one of the reasons that I was convinced was that, of course, I was getting older. I was putting on some weight. I was getting a little bit of a gut. So, my 140, 145 was creeping up on 180. And, I'm starting to get issues that I just assume are associated with old age, like aches and pains and weight gain, and try to go to the gym to work it off and those kinds of things. So I do the research, and I finally decide to step across the line. And first thing is my sinus and allergy trouble didn't get better. It practically disappeared. in fairly short order. So
Wow.
that, and of course there were a handful of people I was following, of course, listening to your podcast and some other people like William Davis, for example.
Sure, Bill Davis. Sure.
Wheat Belly. So I'm skeptical, but everything on his list starts to come true. I get off the wheat and the sugar and the vegetable oils, and the next thing you know, I'm not getting tired. I'm not getting hungry. My energy level stays steady all day. Mental clarity improves. Cravings go away. Weight starts disappearing, even though I'm too busy to make time to go to the gym, which reminds me of another favorite saying of one of these guys is that you don't lose weight to get healthy. You get healthy and then you lose weight.
Right.
So,
right.
You know, it wasn't.
And but it also has to be said that your job, you're a very active person. You're moving
Absolutely.
all day long. All day long.
I'm active. I'm outdoors.
Have you ever worn, or do you wear a ped tracker or any type of step tracker?
I do. I'm usually around 10,000 steps a day.
Right. Okay.
If I'm working, and so yes.
Okay.
So yes, that's true. You know, no question that that diet is key, but being outdoors, vitamin D from the sun, stress levels, good sleep, all those things make a big difference too.
Right.
So, but you know, joint pain goes away, and which kind of leads into what I think is behind a lot of this stuff is inflammation. Oh, and I forgot, I got to put away the CPAP machine.
That's where I was going. So you had sleep apnea, and it went away when you started the ketogenic diet.
It did. I didn't see the point. You know, I didn't have any issues without the CPAP machine, and you know, not to veer off course too much, but you know, I think a CPAP machine's like a drug. Everything has a side effect. And I remember going to an ophthalmologist once, and he said, I'm going to check you for glaucoma. You don't use a CPAP machine, do you? I thought, well, now that's an interesting question.
Right. What did he say about that? Did he say that when you use CPAP, you get glaucoma?
It can elevate pressure in your eye, behind your eye.
Sure. Makes sense, because that pressure, it's pressurizing the sinuses, which are right behind the eye.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yes. So I don't use the machine anymore. Don't miss it. So
okay. So how long did you do keto for?
Well, I think in a sense, to an extent, I'm still doing it, you might say, but when you do the studying about and read up and listen to people about keto, one good way to describe it is it's an elimination diet. You're getting things out of your diet and finding out how it affects your health one way or another.
Right, because these are extreme elimination diets of
yes,
sorts.
Right. So you take that, if you continue to take that one step further, well, get rid of all plant products and see what happens. Or, you know, in the case of
carnivore.
Right, carnivore.
Which is where you are now, right? You consider yourself carnivore, right?
I do. Not a strict carnivore, and because I'll eat blueberries pretty regularly, you know, some fruits, maybe zucchini, something like that once in a while. But for the most part, yes, carnivore. So, you know, breakfast is usually the same, eggs and bacon and coffee, and then usually red meat, some seafood, things like that for dinner. And again, maybe something else. So you only eat a couple, 3 times a day, right? Only 2 meals a day.
Okay, so that answers Liam McAvoy's question. Did you pair these with intermittent fasting or time restricted feeding? It sounds like if you're only eating 2 meals a day, you are also practicing time restricted feeding.
Yes, I'm trying to do that because of work. I have to eat breakfast around 7 o'clock, and then try to have dinner around 5.
Yeah, so you're really hitting time restricted feeding. That's beautiful.
So yes, but you know, it's like William Davis said, you don't get hungry and you don't get tired. Your energy level just stays the same all day. I don't think about food until maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Doesn't even cross my mind.
Right.
So
Okay. So what have you noticed when you transitioned a more traditional high-fat ketogenic diet to a more high-protein carnivore diet? You notice anything? Any changes?
no, I don't. I can't really say that I noticed a change, and I don't really think about the protein to fat ratio. I mean, I'm not aiming for a high protein diet, so
Yeah,
I think
not a 2 meals a day, unless you're like Sean Baker and the 2 meals you have a day are like a pound and a half of steak.
yeah, right, yeah. I mean, there's some guys that they just eat beef and that's it, and he's one of them.
Right.
But no, I mean, fatty seafood um, is on the table, bacon in the morning. So we're if you're low carb, you've hopefully converted your body to burning fat as fuel as opposed to burning sugar as fuel. So
Right.
I wouldn't want to. I mean, I don't think it's wise to try to limit your fat intake.
I agree. So, what's your body weight now?
It's back just under 150.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I got to believe that you're stronger now than you were before too. I mean, especially because you are eating protein makes up a lot of the food that you eat, and obviously fat. Any changes in body strength?
It hasn't diminished. I can promise you that.
Right. Right.
I haven't. I don't think I've lost any muscle mass. But they say your body composition changes, and I would agree with that. Even your skin changes.
So your skin quality got better, you feel?
It did. Yes, it did.
Have you been to the doctors over this period of time of transitioning from vegan, vegetarian, or vegetarian, vegan, keto, and now a more carnivore style of keto?
Right.
What have you noticed in some of your blood work? Anything?
Yes, it's been right at a year since I had any blood work done, and the only thing that went up was the LDL, which again, there's pretty much no consensus at all about LDL, elevated LDL being correlated with heart disease.
Right.
So I'm not the least bit concerned that the LDL is a little bit high. HDL was fine. VLDL was down. Triglycerides dropped like a rock.
Sure, because triglycerides are caused by carbohydrates. People, when your triglycerides are high, your doctor tells you, oh, you got to cut out meat and cheese. And triglycerides just keep going up because as you cut out meat and cheese, what do you eat more of? You eat more starchy foods and carbohydrates. And then the next time your doctor says, man, your triglycerides are still going up, we're going to have to put you on a statin drug. It's almost like they create the problem by telling you to stop eating meat and cheese.
Yes. And my doctor actually did that. She's a DO, and I was, my old doctor retired, so I've been seeing this doctor for a couple of years. And because she's a DO, I'm thinking, well, maybe she's on board with, a lot of this new information, but I was wrong. So, I get a call back from her office and they say, well, this number shows you were dehydrated a little bit and your LDL was high. So you need to make sure you drink this much water every day and you really need to cut back on the red meat. And so I said, thank you, and hung up the phone because red meat's what dramatically changed my health in the first place. I mean, it's like I joke with people all the time. I wasn't this healthy when I was on the track team in high school.
Really?
It just boggles my mind to think you can be 64 years old and say to yourself, there's nothing that I can't do because there's nothing that my health will prevent me from doing. Anything I want to do. The only thing that stops me is common sense.
So how about socializing? Does it restrict you from being able to socialize, or can you always find something to eat when you go to a restaurant?
Pretty much. I'm not as good a restaurant goer, I would say, as I used to be, but a barbecue restaurant is always a good place to go. I can get pork.
Like the Brazilian barbecue places where they just keep feeding you more meat and more sausage all the time, the whole time you're there.
No, I got to find that. Yeah. But yeah, brisket, lots of fat with brisket. pulled pork, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Somebody else can eat the sides. So
So
yes,
what would you tell listeners out there who are, they hop from diet to diet? How long does it take, first of all, once you do a more carnivore style of keto, which is basically low carb, really,
yes.
and you blend in some time restricted feeding, which we just did a show before this that shows that time restricted feeding will protect a woman from getting breast cancer. Think about that. So
Yes.
how long does it take for you to go from average Mike Hazel to superhuman Mike Hazel?
Less time than I would have thought at the outset. Probably a matter of months. I mean, getting off the wheat and getting off the three things, the refined sugar, the grains, and the vegetable oils, I noticed a difference within days. So that's one thing I would tell people. I'd also tell them the cravings will go away. Might be weeks or longer, but you just hang in there and the cravings will go away. And that once that happens, it just continues to get easier.
Is coconut oil okay, Mike, or is even coconut oil is a bad idea for you? I mean,
oh, for me, I've got some that I use it periodically, but and a lot of people ask, well, what do you cook with? Do you use olive oil? Do you use coconut oil? Avocado oil? Well, those are from fruits, and in principle are supposed to be okay, but the question is, what do I cook what in? Because I have bacon and eggs in the morning, so cook the eggs in the bacon grease.
right?
And, I'm not doing sauteed vegetables at dinner, so I don't need any cooking oils, really. I steam the vegetables if I do eat any, like I said, zucchini or maybe broccoli or cauliflower. And that's that. So yeah, I've got, clarified butter and coconut oil if I need them.
Right. So those would be your two go-to: butter first, and then coconut oil, perhaps, if you have to fry something.
Right.
Now,
Correct.
you don't eat any sugar, any other than blueberries, right? You don't eat any cake, any cookies. What about protein bars and stuff like that? Do you ever turn to those?
I do not. Again, because I don't get hungry in the middle of the day, so you don't
need it.
I don't need it. Don't think about it. 2 meals a day, and that's it. That works for me. I know some people. I was listening to somebody recently talking about, the whole thing about cheat meals and keto flexing and that kind of stuff. It's a little foreign to me. I just can't. I just can't get squared with the logic there, because if you've eliminated these foods from your diet and if you determined that they were causing you problems, then, what is it? Why do you call it? Why does this guy say, give yourself a treat? What pleasure is there in having one day a week when you
it's like cigarette smoke, right? You kick smoking, and then somebody says, well, one day a week you can have a cigarette. Well, why? I just kick smoking. Why do I want to introduce something harmful back into my diet?
Exactly. And, Rob Sivas is he's one I listen to. He's a bariatric surgeon, and he considers sugar to be addictive. And he says the same thing. Would you tell an alcoholic to have a glass of wine just on Sundays? Yeah. No. So,
no, you're right.
I don't, people talk about, and this is probably one advantage I have, is that, the eat to live and live to eat dichotomy. So I've never been a person that lives to eat, but some people, it's to get a great deal of pleasure from food. And I say food is fuel, and that's all it is. There are plenty of other ways in life to find pleasure without, going out and having a pizza and then paying the penalty the next day.
God's honest truth. So if you had a pizza, how do you feel? So I'm going to tell you my experience.
Okay.
When Elisa and I, it was a Christmas or two ago, and we were making all this food for Christmas. And Elisa said, I haven't had pizza in so long. So we just were like two wild kids. We said, okay, let's order. So we ordered Papa John's pizza.
Yeah.
and I had 2 slices of pizza that night.
Mm-hmm.
Next morning, I woke up and I really felt hungover. I felt like I had been drinking all night long. I was bleary-headed. I didn't feel good. I was sluggish.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? If you ate pizza, how would you feel the next day, you think?
I would expect that I'd have the same experience you did. The closest thing I can tell you is I had again, got barbecue carryout the other night. So my wife got ribs and I ate the sweet potato that she didn't want. So I ate a baked sweet potato after my meal.
And people would say that's a good, and people would say that's a good carb. That's a good carb.
Well, it's probably not a bad carb, but it's so many carbs and I'm kind of low. So, if I eat something that's 60 or 70 carbs, I'm going to know it. And I kind of did. I felt sluggish that evening and, nothing else I could really pinpoint as a symptom, but, I could tell I'd eaten something that didn't really agree with me as well as it might have. And again, that was a sweet potato.
Niam says, does Mike find he needs any supplements with his diet? Since you're eating kind of a narrow bandwidth of foods, do you have to supplement with anything?
The only supplement I do is collagen powder in my coffee. And that's it.
We don't get enough collagen, especially if we're eating a lot of muscle meat. That's very wise.
Yeah, I've not been able to get over the hump with finding organ meat. Just haven't looked hard enough, but I do want to try that at some point. But in the meantime, a lot of smoked oysters and seafood, high in zinc. So a lot of eggs. So hopefully that
covering your bases
gets me in the ballpark. That's right.
So AR is asking on YouTube, what does reduce breast cancer risk? You have to listen to the first hour of the show, but I'll tell you right now, it's time-restricted feeding. Mm-hmm. When women who have a high risk of breast cancer, even if they don't lose any body weight, listen to this, even if they remain obese, but they just eat an 8-hour window and fast a 16-hour window, that reduces their risk of breast cancer. Think about that. Women could start doing this tomorrow. If you have breast cancer in your family, your mother had breast cancer, or even if you have the BRCA gene, because they showed that even the hormone-dependent cancers, you don't get breast cancer if you just stick to that time feeding window. And it makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. We probably only ate 8 hours a day because the rest of the time we were hiding in our caves.
Right. Well, people talk about what bad advice it was to graze and snack all day and eat 6 tiny meals. Your body's spending energy metabolizing all that food, and your body works on healing and rebuilding itself when you're not eating and when it's not having to digest food. So you give your body the right raw materials and it can heal a lot of things. The testimonials I've read from some of the people I follow are just mind blowing. Knee replacement surgery canceled, heart valve replacement surgery was canceled, just all kinds of things like that.
And the fact that doctors don't have an appreciation for the linkage between diet and disease, really, by now they should be onto this, but they're not. And that's shameful because there's a lot of people out there who will continue to be in disease states. Diabetes is one of them. Every person out there that has type 2 diabetes, 80% of them could reverse their diabetes in 6 months. But instead, they're going to be on medications for the rest of their lives. It's going to lead to heart disease. It's going to lead to kidney failure. It's going to lead to arthritis, because we know arthritis isn't from mechanical loading. It's from inflammation. And when you have a lot of body fat and you have high insulin levels, you end up with a lot of inflammation. It's really, when you really think about it, it's gross negligence what most doctors do today. Gross negligence, because the science is out there. They're just not paying attention because some cute little girl walked in and says, "Hey, we just came out with a new drug. Would you give it to your patients?" "Oh, sure." Yeah, of course. Well, I'll do that.
I had an interesting conversation that I hope is relevant here with a fellow who's a retired police officer, and just about the organizational dynamics and the dynamics of groups. Because I said to him, Bob, I wouldn't say this to just anybody, but we're friends. And the only thing worse than a bad person with a gun is a bad person with a gun and a badge. And he said, you're right. And he said, but here's the problem. If you go against the grain or go against the current in an organization like that, it's going to cost you. You're going to be on the outside looking in a lot of cases, and it could be very costly. So you see that in any group, unions, police, and I'm sure in the healthcare industry too. They've been taught in school that they've just been trained to deal with disease management. Pharmaceuticals and
pharmaceutical companies fund the schools. They build wings and labs, and they donate money. And so, of course, they're going to push their drugs. So AR says he got it. Thanks. So fasting, yes. We don't like to call it fasting anymore because people get afraid. Oh, I'm going to have to starve myself. So it's called time-restricted feeding. Mm-hmm. I like to call it a more ancestral feeding template. But you eat 8 hours a day, and you don't eat for 16 hours a day. He said, I'm 30, and what do you two sharp gentlemen could you pass on to us health-wise, to young guys like him? What do you think? I'll let you go first.
Okay. Well, first, you reminded me of something else that is a great benefit to this way of eating, because it's not a diet. And diets are just conceptually troublesome, because you look at a diet as restriction or punishment of some sort. You're trying to reach a goal, and when you get there, you consider it something you can stop doing now. So the whole idea of a diet is a little troublesome. This is just a way of eating, and you're not restricting calories. When you restrict calories, your body tells you that it gives you a message that you're hungry. So another great thing about this way of eating is that, I don't make it nearly as complicated as some of these guys do with counting macros and this many carbs and all that jazz. You just eat until you're full. And if you're eating carnivore or low carb, you can eat till you're full and you're done. And you won't gain weight. I haven't gained weight in a year and a half. And I don't restrict myself.
So here's what I'll share with you. Almost 16 years of doing this show. I did my first show on cellular senescence in 2008. I remember it because I was doing my show from my apartment. I was going through a divorce. Mm-hmm. I interviewed a scientist from Rutgers, and they had published the first study that showed that glucose signaling is what causes cellular senescence. When we talk about glucose signaling, we mean sugar. When sugar gets high in your blood, it actually makes cells age faster. That was the first thing that I learned. So a low carbohydrate, zero sugar diet. And if you're going to have sugar, have it from whole foods. Maybe if you have some berries or some fruit, but even those have to be done in moderation. Number one. So the low carb diet has been shown to reverse aging of the brain. Think about that. Then the other thing I would say, that I'm going to give you a tip that no one will tell you, but I guarantee it'll pay you in dividends. Donate blood twice a year. There's actually studies out there that show that people who donate blood regularly live longer, but nobody wants to talk about it because they're afraid to talk about it. And you change the oil in your car every 3,000 miles, hopefully, but you don't change your blood your whole life. Men develop iron overload. Women develop iron overload after menopause. We accumulate metabolic waste in our blood. So if you give a pint of blood twice a year, that's 2 fresh pints your body has to make, number one. Number two, when you lose blood, pluripotent stem cells are produced in bone marrow and released into the bloodstream. Stem cells fix broken stuff. You don't have to go get stem cell injections if you donate blood twice a year. Your body will release the stem cells that are needed to repair tissue. So other than that, listen to the show, watch the show. We always talk about this sort of stuff. And do me a favor. If you really do feel like you're learning so much, share this show with other people. And listen to the show regularly. We always do shows like this 4 days a week. I do these shows 4 days a week. So please share the show with someone you know and you care about. Mike, I think we've covered everything.
Great.
I'm sorry for all the technical difficulty. It was my day to have technical difficulty. Right before you came on, I lost all internet. My guest dropped. So now I got a lot of editing and splicing to do to the audio.
Sure.
Thank you for being here, brother.
It's been a real treat. Thank you, Carl.
All right, talk to you later. And we'll see everybody tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Please tune in, share the show, and always patronize the sponsors. We'll see you tomorrow.